had to learn the hard way all the things not to do. And that was a learning curve that I think was graciously, the universe gave me that learning curve because I needed that at the time. I needed to trust more of my inner self. So I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned is there's always some guru or some expert telling you have to do it this way. It's not that they're wrong, but also you have to listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. Trust me, you absolutely need a coach or a mentor to help you establish yourself on this journey. Guess what? You're going to have to learn marketing and sales first, period, end of story. Without marketing and sales, every business dies. If you're a solopreneur and you're not limited to a geographic area, you really do have to niche down because in marketing, specificity is your friend.
You just heard a few moments from my conversation with Adrienne Hill, a systems-first builder who skipped the social treadmill and filled rooms by convening virtual conferences. In this episode, we get into designing your week, so life comes first, tapping other people's audiences when you're starting from zero, and why narrowing your niche makes every minute and dollar work harder. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil Vaish, founder and CEO of Boost Solo. My next guest is a systems whisperer who walked away from high-stakes corporate launches to help solopreneurs turn chaos into cash flow, proving that structure isn't the enemy of freedom. It's the foundation for scaling your business and your life. Adrienne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikhil. I'm excited to dig in and talk about all things business building and solopreneurship.
I am too. So let me start by asking you, you spent 20 years at one company, which is practically unheard of these days. So what kept you at Kimberly-Clark for so long? And what was the moment when you knew it was time to walk away?
Oh, that's a great question. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, when they move into business ownership, they do so because they're trying to escape something. I actually didn't hate my job. I liked my job, many aspects of it. And for many years, I was happy there, and which is why I stayed. I wasn't really seeking accolades or money. I just wanted to live the lifestyle I wanted to live, and they were giving me that. Although I did get, as soon as I turned 30, I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. As soon as I turned 30, I started feeling like I would rather work for myself than somebody else. And a lot of that was connected to the one aspect of my career that I didn't enjoy was the corporate politics. I think everyone can probably get on board with that.
Yeah.
And so the politics bothered me, but also I was realizing I really didn't own my time. Someone else was in charge of my time, how, when, and where I could work, how, when, and where I could vacation, when I had free time, when I didn't, whether I could move to a different state or not. I was kind of anchored to where I was. And so combine the two. And I really just thought, I've been building brands for, billion-dollar corporations. I'd rather help build brands and businesses for the little guys.
Yeah.
And that also just felt so much more fulfilling to me. And so I thought, the level of freedom and lifestyle I'm looking for, I know there's other people looking for that. And those are the people that I have more of a heart to help.
Yeah, I think you just resonated with half the working population in this country in terms of the list you just laid out. But also it's funny that, right, I think it's interesting. Not a lot of people realize that you don't have to burn out. You don't have to be miserable and hate your job. You could just decide that this chapter you're ready to move on to the next chapter, right? And there are enough stories like that too, which I think are interesting because most people think solopreneurship happens after a really bad event, which, it can, but not always.
Not always. Yeah. And for me, it just started as like this quiet little whisper in the back of my mind, this little nudge of intuition that I just kept putting off until one day I thought, I'm going to listen to that little voice now. I'm not going to put this off anymore. And, that started everything.
Good for you. So you chose to move to a remote area with no job market, right? So in a world where careers often dictate where you live, what made you flip the script and prioritize place over paycheck, if I can call it that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because I know tons of people are looking for location freedom now more than ever, especially after being able to work remotely and suddenly having it taken away, seemingly for no good reason. Like there's no good reason. We all know that. I really wanted location freedom. So I grew up in this very beautiful, very remote area. And so it's all I knew. That was my normal. That was my baseline. And of course, as a young, naive person, I thought, yeah, every place is kind of the same, right? Like it doesn't matter where I live. And I moved away. And honestly, I moved away for my career initially. It was only like 4.5, 5 hours away. And it was culture shock. It was night and day different. It was city sprawl. There was no trees. There was no nature element. And I realized very quickly within a week, I'm like, what have I done? What have I done and how do I get back? Um, and then honestly, I started building that career. I kind of got sucked into it. I was enjoying it. But I spent for almost 20 years, and I'm not kidding, I spent almost every single weekend driving the 4.5 hours back to my home.
Wow.
And I finally was like, I need to make the jump. And because there's no job market here, I mean, tourism is huge here, but there's no industry here, right? I realized I'm either going to be stuck like working in a grocery store or like working retail or something, or I need to build my own career sufficient to fuel the lifestyle that I want, right? And so it was really just kind of like returning home for me. Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense, and it also sort of ties back into the little whisper you had, right? Because you sort of put yourself in a position where you're like, okay, now I have no choice but to actually make that leap
Yeah,
to solopreneurship. So
yeah.
you also mentioned to me when we chatted that your first business failed. So if you had to name one hard-earned lesson that still shapes your choices today, what would you say it was?
Well, it depends on how you define failure. And I'm trying to think back which business. Like at this point, I've run so many businesses that I'm like, which one would I have thought was the first one? So I initially got started in network marketing because I didn't know what I was doing. And here's the weird thing. I did know what I was doing. I had been building successful brands for years in corporate, but somehow I had a hard time translating that to my own business. It's different when you own it. And so I jumped into network marketing and I did what everyone told me to do. And spoiler alert, whatever they tell you to do when you join a network marketing company is the last thing you should do. The way that they train is terrible, right? And so I had to learn the hard way all the things not to do. And that was a learning curve that I think was graciously, the universe gave me that learning curve because I needed that at the time. But it was also a part of me realizing that no, I do have lots of background experiences and skills and knowledge that I can be pulling in of my own accord. I don't have to listen to someone else's guidance. Like I needed to trust more of my inner self. So I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned is there's always some guru or some expert telling you you have to do it this way. And yeah, there's probably some legitimacy to what they're saying. It's not that they're wrong, but also you have to listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. And quite often in business, the only way you succeed is to move away from what everyone else is doing and do what you feel aligned with. Because if you're just a box checker and you're checking the boxes of what other people say, but it's not resonating with you, you're not actually aligned to it, or even maybe you feel a little opposed to it, but you're like, well, this is what they say to do, so I'm going to do it. You'll never have results when that's the energetic state you're in because you're not even in alignment with yourself. How can other people then be in alignment with you to want to do business with you, right? So
True.
that was a big learning curve for me as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because the honest truth is there is no roadmap for solopreneurship, right? I mean, the corporate world is so well mapped out, your career, your path, your sort of, as you rise through the ranks. Whereas with solopreneurship, you're sort of left in the middle of nowhere with no map. And it's only natural. Even when I first started, I was like, oh, I should listen to people who've done this and try and do this and try and do that. And also, I think the other thing is we come with a toolkit of skills, right? So it's very hard to figure out which one you should sort of use to build your business, because obviously all of them just confuses the hell out of your audience, and they're like, so what exactly do you do? So I think
Yes.
that's part of the learning curve, right?
Yeah. And I think what's key, and because I don't want people to get led astray by this, so far where we're going in the conversation, it almost makes it sound like, oh, you don't need a coach or a mentor, just go in your own direction. But I actually disagree with that. You trust me, you absolutely need a coach or a mentor to help you establish yourself on this journey. But it has to be someone that like the minute you meet them and start talking to them and they're telling you about like the strategies they use and the techniques they use, you have to immediately have this gut instinct of like, this is for me. This is the path I'm meant to be on. This is the strategy I'm meant to follow. This is the mentor who's living the life I want to live. And therefore their advice will apply to me. Because if you're trying to go it entirely alone, you're going to make 10 times less for 10 times longer, because you're going to make every mistake and go in every circle and waste tons of time. So you really do need a coach or mentor of some sort, but it has to be the right one that, like, you almost need to feel like a spark when you meet them of like, oh, this is my person. Like, you instinctively need to know it. So absolutely find a coach or mentor, but make sure that you have that intuition around them. If both things are lighting up, you're on the path to success.
I agree. But I think there's also some degree of experimentation, right? Which is, I think, healthy initially to kind of fine tune and figure out, what that, and also meeting lots of people is important, right? And I always say find your tribe too, right? Because you're right. Nobody can do this alone, and you shouldn't try, because it is a very lonely journey. And having sort of I call them the two angels, right? The cheerleaders who will always support you no matter what. And then I call them the truth tellers, the ones you really need to sort of keep you, like you were saying, honest and give you the feedback you need to grow. It may not be the most comfortable feedback, but it's what's going to help you sort of figure out what you were just saying, find that spark and find that passion. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So let me ask you, when you made the leap to solopreneurship, what expectations did you have? And what are the things that surprised you, if anything?
In general, the whole reason I jumped in and finally started a business, my original expectation was that I wanted to replace my salary and quit my job within 5 years. So I gave myself a runway, certainly. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily invest in the right coach in the beginning. And so it took me longer than 5 years to even start to have any success at all, much less the level of success I needed to leave my corporate job. So I had expectations, but they weren't really grounded in reality per se. And everyone I've ever talked to who's had success in entrepreneurship, especially their first round into entrepreneurship, it takes longer than you think. Always. And so you almost have to ask yourself, like, okay, if this was guaranteed to work for me, but it was also guaranteed to take 10 times longer than I think, do I still want to do it? Like, have that honest, conversation with yourself, because I don't know that I've ever met an entrepreneur who said like, oh yeah, my business took off and grew exactly at the pace I was hoping. Like, no, it almost never works that way. Yeah.
Unless you scroll through Instagram, you'll see lots of examples, right? Of like
liars. They're all liars.
That's what I would tell people. My pet phrase is, if you build it, they will not come, to your point.
That is true.
Which is, and if you, like you said, in the 5th year, if you're still loving what you're doing, even if you haven't seen the results, then you're on the right path, right? And it is perseverance, and it's sort of one foot in front of the other, and it's brick by brick. I don't know any other way of doing it. There is no light switch. So I totally agree with you. So I want to talk a little bit about brands and building brands. So building your brand now. And you said something interesting, which is like, it's very different when you're shepherding another brand, like, Kimberly Clark or Apple or Kodak, versus when you're building your own brand. You're building yourself, right? So you talk about helping solopreneurs sort of build skills, structure, and systems to scale, right? So can you tell me, what do people misunderstand about what you do?
Oh, wow. That's a meaty question. So first of all, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on the skills side. I always start with basic skills when I'm working with a new client, because you have to have the foundation under you. And a lot of solopreneurs just believe, whatever it is that they're good at. Oh, I just want to be a coach. I don't want to deal with all this marketing and business stuff, or I just want to be a consultant, or I just want to be a service provider or agency or whatever it is, but I don't want to do this thing over here. And it's like, well, guess what? You're going to have to learn marketing and sales first, period. End of story. Without marketing and sales, every business dies. And so if you just want to be a coach, but you don't want to learn marketing and sales, be a guest coach in someone else's coaching program, right? Be the intrapreneur, the one who supports the entrepreneur. If you want to be the entrepreneur, if you want to be the owner of the business, you have to learn fundamental skills, sales, marketing, personal leadership, time management, financial management. Like these are non-negotiable. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who they're actually intrapreneurs, meaning they're meant to be like the number two supporter of the entrepreneur, but they think they're entrepreneurs. Yet they complain about all of those other aspects that you have to figure out if you're the owner of the company. So fundamentally on the skill side, I think that's the, one of the biggest misconceptions out there, or the mistakes people make.
Yeah, true. And to your point, you have to wear many different hats, but you don't have to be like a genius at everything, or like, but you have to have a level of competence enough to be able to run a successful business, right? And
Yeah.
I learned that lesson the hard way too. I mean, sales is the lifeline, because
Yeah.
if you can't go out and bring in new clients, build your pipeline, then you don't really have a business.
You don't have a
And
business.
also,
Yeah.
branding can't save that, right? You can have very fancy, lovely marketing, but if you're not being able to close people, and I speak to so many people who are like, my post gets so much engagement,
Yeah.
but they don't become clients.
And it's interesting you say that, because I feel like people are either really, really good at marketing and they struggle with sales, or they're really good at sales and they struggle with marketing. It's actually really hard to be very skilled at both.
True.
And you don't have to be an expert at both. You just have to be good enough to keep the clients flowing in, or the business customers, whatever you call them, right? So I think that's one of the areas. But then in the structure area, like you kind of alluded to in the beginning, people feel like structure is their enemy. Like, oh, I became an entrepreneur because I want to be in charge of my time and my calendar. And, I don't want to be so structured and regimented. But you realize very quickly, if you don't have a minimum level of structure layered in various ways, you're just riding the struggle bus to hot mess city. Like you're just all over the place, right? So you need a minimum amount of structure to keep yourself organized, keep your company organized, your employees, if you have employees. Usually for solo entrepreneurs, maybe you don't, or maybe you just have a VA or something. But how you're structuring your time, how you're structuring your whatever it is you're delivering for people, right? Like structure is your friend, actually. But it's funny how many people resist that, and especially how many people resist kind of using a calendar to structure their time is the biggest area that I see people bristle. And they're like, I'm a solopreneur because I want to be in charge of my time and I don't want to have meetings and time blocks. And it's like, oh, okay, you can do that. You're just going to be real loosey-goosey, and your results will be loosey-goosey too, So structure and discipline are important for entrepreneurs. And then on the system side, there is so much confusion around systems. So many people using the wrong tech stack for the business that they're running, or just randomly scooping up systems and tools and platforms and tech just based on, a whim, versus really having strategy behind that, which is a big reason. I'm a big believer. If you have the fundamental skills, you've layered in the minimum level of structure you need to not be a hot mess, and you have the right systems in place, your business will thrive. If you're struggling, it's almost always one of those three. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but it's a difficult thing to explain to people, right? And I think a lot of people sort of mistake corporate bureaucracy for structure, right? So, like you said, it's like we're breaking free from the bureaucratic, labyrinth, but that's not what we're talking about, right? You're basically talking about a system that allows you to focus on the things that will help you grow your business while the other things continue to run in a way that, is not, you're not staying up till midnight every night, or waking up at 2 a.m. trying to fix things while you're getting ready for a client, whatever, the next day. So I totally agree. And the other thing reminded me of as you talked is like those movie sets where it's like the outside looks so beautiful and you realize behind is just a little facade, right? There's nothing behind it. And that's how a lot of solo businesses are. I mean, I've learned some of those lessons the hard way too. When it's all well and good when there are 1 or 2 clients, but when you start to want to grow and you want to scale as one person, you cannot do that unless you have all the things you just talked about in place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like you said, it's not like you have to go to the level that a corporation would go to, but you need just enough to be functional and efficient at what you do.
Yeah, and so you're not chasing your tail, or you're not a hot mess, as you put it. So um, now you're not someone who leans into hype marketing, right? You mentioned that to me. So what's been the trickiest part of building visibility without resorting to, say, FOMO or flash?
The trickiest part. I would say, so I'm completely different in that I know, especially in the solopreneur world, 99% of people think that the way to find success is by leaning in with social media. Um, I built my entire business completely devoid of social media. So, so a lot of times for me, the trickiest part is, so all the people that I network with and interact with and meet, like you and others, the shows I'm on, when they ask about my social presence and how many followers I have, it's helping them to understand that I really don't have many and I really don't care because I have a level of success that doesn't require that. And everyone kind of looks at me sideways like, wait, what? So what? It's very confusing to people. And so the only time that's really caused issues for me is, when I'm talking to people that I admire or respect who are further along than me, if they don't understand how I got to where I got to, they almost are dismissive of me and my accomplishments because it just doesn't compute in their mind. And so that can create some perception issues at times. So maybe that's probably the trickiest part is the perception issues attached to that.
Yeah, but again, it's like I agree with you. I don't think you need that to succeed, right? But we've basically created a culture, and especially like you said in the solopreneur space, where it's like if you're not posting, it's like the old Rene Descartes thing. Of, I think therefore I am. I say I post therefore I am. It's like
Yeah.
that's the myth that has been created, that if you're not out there posting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and don't have a billion followers, you're never gonna. And the flip side of that is I've spoken to so many people who've been like, oh, my post went viral, but I didn't get one client out of that. I had like 3
Yeah.
million people look at it, but
Mm.
not one person actually paid me to do anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I agree
Followers
with you.
don't pay the bills.
No,
They
no.
don't. No.
And it's, to me, it's more about creating value, right? However you do that. So I
Hmm.
think that's the most important thing. And then obviously you have a track record to sort of match that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I want to touch back on one thing you said earlier, which was interesting to me, which is you talk about how structures create freedom, and we just spent a few minutes talking about that. But how do you convince or demonstrate that to an audience, like you said a minute ago? Because typically people who step into solopreneurship feel like they want to be spontaneous and they resist structure, right? So how do
Yeah.
you sort of get them to understand that's important?
Yeah. That's such a great question because so many people resist this. So I actually do I have a yearly planning session for my clients, and sometimes I offer it for free to people in my network to help them plan out their year. And, there's a lot of structure that gets built into that. And therefore a lot of resistance. And so what I actually have people start with is I'm like, listen, if you're going to run a successful business that makes a meaningful amount of money such that it's feeding a lifestyle, you have to have structure and you really kind of have to use your calendar, make your calendar work for you rather than you working for your calendar, right? And I have a saying, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. So if you tell me, oh yeah, I'll get that to you next week, but you don't go to your calendar next week and find a half-hour slot that says send XYZ to Adrienne, guess what? It's not going to happen because you're going to forget because we're humans. Okay. Like we all suffer from the human condition. Okay. So the first thing I do is I have clients sit down and I say, listen, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put time blocks for all the times we are not working. We're not working. We're on vacation. We're with our family. We're doing the lifestyle stuff we want our business to support. So plug all of that in first. Plug in your vacations, plug in your workout times, plug in your lunch hour with your family, plug in the evening time slots where you're not working, you're having dinner and you're hanging out with your family and whatever. Plug in like blocks around all the times you are not working. And people kind of look at me funny. And I'm like, listen, the only way we're going to address the fact that your mind wants to throw a fit right now is to do that first. And let's dream and let's have fun with like, oh yeah, here's all these fun things I want to do with my family, with my friends, this great trip I want to take, this day off I want to take, like whatever. Like, let your mind really have fun with that, because if you're not enjoying your life at the end of the day, your business is just another version of a job. It's just another set of handcuffs that you put on. So first we block all the times they're not working, right? All the lifestyle stuff they want. Then we say, okay, now around that, we're going to build your business around that. Okay. And we have certain, like recurring time slots that might come in to do certain types of work. If you're learning a new strategy, for example, put aside, 1 hour every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 8 weeks to learn that new skill, right? Whatever that might be. That's just an example. And then all the open time that's not filled, that's where you get to do your sales and your marketing. You get to talk to prospective clients or customers. You get to close the sale and roll them into their vision, all these things. And that usually helps people to embrace the structure rather than fight it. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I love how you start with something that's going to lower resistance, right? Because people are usually scared of their calendars. And I actually learned that trick the hard way when I was last back in the corporate world consulting in like 2018, 19. At that time, and when I left in 2008, you couldn't do this, but people could book time on your calendar, like anyone in the company. And that drove me crazy because it's like there would be nothing left free. So I started blocking time, which was just thinking
Work
time.
time.
Yeah, thinking time. Just like, I'm like, I'm not available. Like you can't just, so that's why, and now you're right. I mean, I've become like, I'll be a great, candidate for you because I'm like, I calendar everything.
Oh,
Everything.
everything.
Yeah. If I'm
Yeah.
like, we finished the call now and I've got to follow up with you, I will put that in my calendar tomorrow morning. Send
Excellent.
Adrienne X. Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
So
And I'm the
I,
same way. And I love that. And it's
yeah.
like, well, because there's this aspect that happens to a lot of people, and it's weird. It's like we have all this guilt wrapped up in our business, especially in the beginning. Because anytime we're working on it, we feel guilty that we're not with our family, especially if it's not producing money yet, right? Because in the beginning, you have to put a lot of things in place to get ready to produce cash flow. So you're putting in a lot of work before the money's there. You kind of feel guilty, right? But then later, when you're spending time with your family, you feel guilty you're not working on your business. So there's like this weird, angst in the beginning for a lot of people. And so, you have to find a way to work with that and around that. And I think, there's a lot of times I'll be meeting with clients. How did it go making progress on XYZ? And they'll say, well, I set aside time to do it, but when the time rolled around, I got pulled into that. I was distracted by that. This happened. I just, I just let the time block get taken over with something else. And I say, well, okay, when you have a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment, do you blow that off? They're like, well, of course not. I can't let someone else down. And I'm like, aha, you can't let someone else down, but you can let yourself down. Like, what's going on there? If you're going to show up for anyone, show up for yourself. And so then there's like some mindset stuff going on that we get to unpack. But it's funny how we all have this. Like, if we're showing up for someone else, we're going to bring our best. But if we're showing up for ourselves, we dial back, or we give ourselves a break, or we blow off the work. And it's a fundamental. Personal leadership is a requirement to succeed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I'm not sure what it is, but everyone sort of has slippage with themselves, right? I agree with you. And also, I just remembered something else. A friend of mine recently told me, like, and how to make it fun. So like, I don't love my spreadsheet, my bottom line, but you got to go look at it. It's important to be on top of it, my costs and blah, blah. So now she said, have coffee with it on like a Sunday morning, just for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And so now it's calendared in, and I'll get a cup of coffee and we'll sit down and we'll hang out and we'll, have a little chat, my spreadsheet and I. So,
or even come up with rewards for yourself.
Yeah.
Like if you're anything like me, maybe you hate content creation and social media, but you recognize it's a necessary evil. Every time that you have integrity with yourself and you use your time block to make that content, allow yourself to reward yourself with something else later in the week. Ooh, now I get to set aside an hour to go get a manicure or whatever speaks to you, right? You can reward yourself for doing the things that you don't like doing. It's always a great way to make yourself swallow the frog, as they say,
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be crazy stuff, right? You don't be buying yachts for yourself and stuff. It can be simple things, simple pleasures. And I completely
Yeah.
agree.
I get to
So
go take my dog for a walk. I get to, take a
absolutely.
nap today, a 20-minute nap. I mean, it could be anything. Yeah.
Yeah, true. So the other thing you mentioned to me, which is interesting, is that you have specific strategies that give you an instant audience, I think is the way you described it, right? So without giving away all your secrets, can you paint a picture of what that looks like in practice?
Yeah. So when I first launched my business and I was actively, seriously looking to leave corporate, um, this is what I did is I activated one of these rounds of what I call audience explosion, because you can't sell to an empty room, right? And that applies to every business of every type. I don't care what kind you're leading. Um, and so I knew, like, okay, I have to build an audience, but I kind of hate social media and I don't want to do it with social media. So what are my other options, right? And I was pretty serious about finding a way to plug that gap, right? And so I found a method that you're essentially, in a nutshell, and I'll super simplify this, you're hosting an online or virtual conference of some sort. You have multiple speakers come in. So very much like how you're interviewing me now, it's that exact concept, but multiply it by 20 or 30 interviews. Now you have a panel of speakers. And because here's the real truth. If you want lots of people to show up all at once, give them a reason to show up all at once, right? So you host this virtual conference, you have these various speakers. All of the speakers promote the event, of course, because they want people to come see them on stage. And by all of them promoting, you build an instant audience. In only 2 weeks, I've seen people bring in between 1 and 2,000 leads into their business in only 2 weeks. And then, of course, now they have all these new leads to fill the room so they can sell them whatever their offer or service is. And so I essentially did that, which allowed me. And part of the reason I didn't want to use social, I didn't want to tip off all of my corporate network of what I was doing. I wanted to fly under the radar a little bit. And so it was great because I had thousands of people showing up, every time I did one of these, and all of my corporate network was completely oblivious to what I was doing, right? So it was kind of nice. And so by the time I had brought in, by leveraging that strategy, I earned 6 figures in 6 months, getting my first coaching business off the ground. And so when I announced that I was leaving my corporate job, everyone was like, "Well, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm running my own business." They're like, "What? You are? What is it?" Like they didn't even know. Um, and so that was interesting. But that's essentially how I build visibility and lead generation, completely separate from social media.
I love that. Yeah. And also, like you said, you're delivering value. You're giving the audience something that, they're going to walk away with, irrespective of whether they get a sale or not. They're still going to walk away with tremendous value. And
Yeah,
also, I love how you, by under the radar, I almost feel like you've sort of created reverse FOMO, right? Because people spend so much time promoting an event in social media, and I almost feel like they spend so little time actually thinking through the event and what they're going to deliver, right? So much time is spent promoting it. So
yeah,
it's almost, in my mind, the balance is opposite, because you're not spending time on your megaphone. You're spending time making sure that the people there will be able to deliver something of value to everyone who shows up. So
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. And people love these events. I mean, whether it's, I'm sure the people, for those of you watching, you've probably attended an in-person conference at some point. Maybe you have, or maybe you haven't attended a virtual conference at some point, but the concept is still the same. You have, experts coming in and talking about various topics, and you can pick and choose. Oh, I'm going to listen to this one and that one and that one, based on whatever it is you're trying to learn. And what I love about this concept is, if you've ever attended one of these conferences, virtual or in person, and you're choosing the speakers you're going to listen to and you're planning your day around it, you're far more serious about learning a new thing or solving a problem than you are when you're just scrolling on social media and you're like, "Oh yeah, I have 15 minutes before my dentist appointment. I'll just scroll, scroll, scroll." Like In which situation are you more serious and engaged? I wonder, right? So, also the leads that are generated from events like that, they're far more likely to become buyers.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you're right. They've actually made a conscious choice, right? So they've sort of picked, like you said, if it's the 10 a.m. session and the 3 p.m. session, obviously there was an interest, and then they will put in their calendar, to your earlier point, and they will show up, right? Versus just a free something or a marketing call or something where you know you're going to be sold to.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that. And I'm going to have to steal that. I'll be completely
Yeah.
honest. What's the biggest misconception solopreneurs have about building an audience when they're starting from zero?
Well, the biggest misconception is they think they have to build it themselves from scratch.
Right.
They
Okay.
think they have to generate all the followers and they have to turn those followers into buyers and they have to do everything from the ground up. And you can, but it's really slow. Right? And so why not tap into other people's audiences? Right? Why not create some leverage around this so that you're getting every minute you spend on your business, you're far more likely to get a return. You're getting the most for your money and the most for your time. It's totally ethical. It's well understood. If you've ever heard the term affiliate launch, right? It's the same idea. It's like, oh, okay, let's tap into some other people's audiences so we don't have to build from ground zero. Because building from ground zero is hard and slow
Absolutely. Yeah.
and frustrating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. And you're sort of like riding on each other's sort of the wind in each other's back, right? You're sort of
Yeah.
putting the wind in each other's back. So you're right, because everyone's got their own little audience. But when you combine that, the power of that gets much greater. And you also multiply the exposure that their little audience gets to a much broader skill set or toolkit, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's sort of a win-win. And
Yeah.
the other thing I would say is also, like, as I talk to you, it's like people also probably believe that they have to go and spend 24 hours a day on social media and trying to build 1 billion followers, right? That's probably the other misconception that's probably out there. And I can't say I haven't been, uh, uh, taken in by that a little bit sometimes. So, but I also hate social media. I hate this idea of, like, I feel like it's a self-aggrandizement platform at the end of the day, really.
Well, and at the end of the day, when you think about it, when people go to social media, and I mean, we're talking about the human condition here, so I'm just going to be really honest and blunt. People go to social media because it feels good to talk about themselves. You make a post and like, it. For those of you listening or watching, you make a post. What do? You let it sit for a little bit and then you check on it. Oh, did anyone like it yet? Oh, did anyone comment on this yet? Like, right? Like it's mostly self-interest. And so if you're trying to build a business in a place where everyone is self-interested, that's very challenging unless you're really good at marketing. Because the key to marketing is just speak to their interests, not yours, right? But even with that being said, they're so self-interested and they're so busy checking on their own posts. How much attention do you really think they're giving to yours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not much,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In fact, I recently attended a sort of an off the record with some neuroscientists, and they said that Silicon Valley came to them early on and said, you know, help us build that dopamine effect into all our software. And that, I mean, so you're absolutely right. That's exactly how it's been built, right? And that's why I say it's a self-aggrandizement. Ultimately, even if you believe you're giving value, which the better posts might do, it's still about you, right? And your voice and your little soapbox that in the old days you'd put up in Hyde Park and go and talk about the fate of the planet. But now, of course, we don't need to go anywhere. We can do that from our phone.
That's right. That's right.
You,
Yeah.
you you've worked with digital businesses and brick and mortar, right? So how do you explain to a local restaurant owner why they need to care about digital marketing when they probably think, oh, my customers just walk through the door? Why do I have to worry about that?
Yeah. So for a local business, the absolute best thing that you can do is to create a really good Google business profile and then push all of the information from that profile to all the other different types of search engines, Bing and Yellow Pages and Yelp and whatever, right? Because you're then you're basically letting Google send you free leads all the time.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And the great thing is when someone is on Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever maps they're on, or whether they're doing a Google search, if they're searching something, they're interested in that thing. Remember, I said people are self-interested, right? So you're tapping into free traffic of people who you know for sure are interested in what you offer, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, if you're a local business, do SEO optimization on your Google profile. Let Google send you all the people and let them do the hard work for you, right? And then definitely 100% make sure that you are requesting reviews. That's a tongue twister from every single one of your customers, replying to every one of those reviews. Google is just going to send you more and more and more free traffic. You don't even have to run ads. So if you're a local business, double down on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. Most people, when they think about digital marketing, think about fancy ads, but that's not what we're talking about, right? You're basically talking about leveraging an engine to sort of bring you people through the door, right? In a way you don't
Yeah.
have to, all you have to do
And
is
one way
deliver.
or the other, like you have to have some sort of a digital footprint. But if you can combine your digital footprint with tapping into someone else's audience, that's when you have the money maker. So if you're a local business, your digital footprint is your Google business profile and your website that's attached to it. And the other people's traffic is Google's traffic that you're going to plug into. If you're a solopreneur or you can work with anyone, say across the US and Canada, and you're not restricted to a local area, these virtual conferences are a great way to create a digital footprint for yourself, get people aware of you in the digital world. And then you're tapping into other people's audience by having all the speakers promote it. And again, that's that version of the win-win. So it's like, regardless of what type of business you have, you need digital assets and a digital footprint, and you need to tap into audiences as fast as possible. And when you can marry those things, the magic happens.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I appreciate you sharing that. So the other thing I want to talk about, there's this pressure for solopreneurs to sort of niche down immediately, right? So how did you sort of navigate finding your thing while still paying the bills?
That's a great question. You do, especially if you're not a local business. Like if you're a local business, you don't really have to niche down, just like do your thing. If you're a solopreneur and you're not limited to a geographic area, you really do have to niche down, because in marketing, specificity is your friend. The more you can speak to a specific circumstance, a specific pain point, a specific outcome that someone wants, they're more likely to listen, right? Because now you're not just competing with the people in your local market, you're competing with everyone online in the world. So if you don't niche down, you just sound like vanilla, vanilla, vanilla. Like, here's the 427th flavor of vanilla. Like, okay, how about let's be Zanzibar chocolate, right? I would rather attract the small little group of people who are in love with Zanzibar chocolate than to try to compete with the, billions of people whose favorite is vanilla. So you have to niche down to grab people's attention. And so for me, with my background in project management and managing launches, I realized like, okay, I want to project manage my business into success. I want to create leverage. I stumbled across the virtual conference model or the audience explosion model. And I had so much success with it that I thought, you know what? I'm going to niche down on that initially, and I'm going to teach other people this model. And so that's what I did. That was my niching at that time. And I spent multiple years in that niche. And just now I'm expanding now to working more with brick and mortar businesses and helping them create their digital footprint and some other fun things that I'm working on. But that's the thing about niching. Like, people have this view of, once I niche down, I'm pigeonholed in that. I can never do anything but that. And I'm stuck there. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's just going to get you your initial cash flow. You can always expand from there. You can always pivot from there. You can always grow from there, but you have to start somewhere. You have to get specific enough in your marketing to catch someone's attention in the first place.
Yeah, no, I love the vanilla and the Zanzibar chocolate analogy, because you're absolutely right. And the other thing, and I think there are two things here at play, right? One is, again, going back to human nature, most people feel like if I go wide, I'll attract somebody, versus realizing that's exactly like you said, everyone's competing for vanilla. But if you go narrow, not so many people are really talking about Zanzibar chocolate,
Yeah.
right? And I always
Yeah.
talk about it like if you have a leak in your kitchen, you're not going to call a Mr. All of home fix it, right? Even if that may be the most brilliant person who can fix everything in the house, you're going to call a plumber because that's
Hmm.
specific to your problem, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think that's people, it's a hard thing to understand, especially when you go solo.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, IBM can have like 7 different target audiences. They've got the marketing budget, they've got the the industry sort of verticals and stuff like that. But as a solopreneur, you also can't spread yourself so thin.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
really, that's what it comes down to. If you have $1 million budgets, sure, you can market about your vanilla ice cream all day. But if you don't have the cash flow to support that kind of marketing, you have to niche down to have every dollar working for you as hard as possible. Or if it's mostly sweat equity, every minute of labor working for you, you know, as efficiently as it can.
yeah, absolutely. So, and talking about cash flow, so you mentioned to me that most businesses die because of lack of cash flow. So, have you ever been in a position where you wondered if you'd be one of those statistics? And if so, how did you push through?
That's a great question. So early on, I always tell my clients I struggled for 6 years before I really brought in any kind of meaningful amount of cash flow. And it's because during those 6 years, I was learning all the things not to do,
Right.
doing
Yeah.
all the wrong stuff. I was listening to the wrong people. I was activating the wrong strategies. I was distracted, all those things. Um, and it was really, when I doubled down on working with a coach and learning this virtual conference strategy and niching down that things finally started to work for me. So it's yeah, I mean, I definitely during that time period wondered, am I ever going to make it? Like, am I ever going to, is this ever going to work for me? Or am I just kind of fooling myself? Is this just a pipe dream? Like, am I crazy? Everyone already thought I was and here's the other thing. As entrepreneurs, we're built different. We're willing to take levels of risk most people aren't. We're willing to try new things that scare most other people. So you're already surrounded by people who think you're crazy, right? And then on top of it, if you start doubting yourself, I mean, you can go down a downward spiral pretty quickly. Um, and so I actually, when I finally stumbled across the coach who helped me to really get my big break and taught me this conference strategy, I was this close to canceling my entire business. I actually told my husband, at the time we weren't even married yet. But I told him, I said, I think, I've given it a fair shot more than once. I mean, for 6 years, right? I think I'm going to throw in the towel. I think I'm done. This just isn't for me. And he's like, I will support you in whatever you want to do. My ads account had just gotten shut down. And so I had no way to generate the lead flow I needed. Um, Darn Facebook ads, right? And so, but I stumbled across this coach and she kind of explained the strategy to me. And it's like what I explained in the beginning. I had that moment. It was almost like an electric feel of like, this is what I've been looking for. I felt instant alignment. It was like the light bulb went off and I had that intuition around it. And I thought, it's worth giving it one last shot before I throw in the towel, you know? Um, and that honestly was what led to me earning 6 figures in 6 months and leaving my corporate job, you know?
Yeah.
And so, oh yeah. And I've wanted to quit so many times, so many times. Like, I think that's common and normal.
Absolutely. Yeah, we wouldn't be human if we weren't. And I appreciate you sharing that because and that's true, right? There is no magic formula, right? Like, and those 6 years, I love that you said you learned all the things you shouldn't do or shouldn't be doing or should be distracted by. But that was valuable learning too. It laid the foundation for, and also because you persevered, you sort of got to that spark, right? And I don't think we talk about that enough, right? We spend so much time just sort of showcasing the success and sweeping away or under the rug all the the trials, the tribulations, the ups and downs that go to landing on that success. So I appreciate you sharing that because that's really what this show is about. So if we were to meet again 5 years from now, where would you want to be? What would you want to have achieved?
Gosh, if I'm being totally honest,
Yeah.
5 years from now, I would like to be planning or actively moving into retirement.
Okay. That's
Yeah. I mean, I'm 45. I realize 50 is a little early to retire. Um, But honestly, I've reached that point in life where time is so much more valuable than money. Lifestyle and family is so much more valuable than a title or a revenue number, or, like, I just like, sure, you need enough to live the lifestyle you want, but I'm not trying to impress anyone with my bank account, like, I just want to live the life I want to live. And honestly, that's what I'd want to be doing 5 years from now, and so I'm setting the runway now to plan for that. You always have to plan ahead and depending on what you're working towards, anywhere from 5 to 15 years ahead. And I'm actively planning that phase of my life because, my kids are now at an age where they're getting married. I'm sure a few years from now they'll start having kids, and like, yeah, I want to be present with them, you know, and lifestyle first, money second. Like, the money supports the lifestyle, but the lifestyle doesn't chase the money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You shouldn't be a slave to that, right? And you're right. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and it takes us a long time to learn that. So I totally agree. So if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you tell them?
I would say wanting to start, meaning they haven't started yet, but they're
They haven't
thinking
started
about it.
yet. Yes.
I would say choose a niche or choose an area where you already have some sort of background or some sort of expertise in. So many people ignore um, all of their lifelong learning leading up to that point, and when they think about starting a business, they think it has to be something completely new, completely outside of anything they've ever done, completely different. And honestly, you're going to have better success and better results if you tap into your lifelong knowledge in some sort. It could be taking an aspect of something you learned in your career and turning that into a business. It could be taking something personal that you do that everyone seems to comment on all the time, and you're thinking, that's not a big deal. Why does everyone always talk to me about, like I'm the expert in that? But it's because whatever your zone of genius is seems so normal to you that you're like, oh, that little thing? Yeah, whatever that little thing is, that's what your business needs to be centered around. Because it's such an obvious zone of genius for you that you don't even view it as a big deal. um, so I would say that, like, I went into network marketing thinking, well, I got to learn somehow. I'll do this. That had nothing to do with my zone of genius. And so, of course, I struggled. The minute I took my zone of genius, which is, basically being a project manager, implementing skill structure systems. I used to be an engineer, so I'm like really analytical and like structured. Um, as soon as I took those skills into my business, that's when things took off and people started reaching out to me and going, oh, geez, the thing I'm horrible at, you're great at. Can you help me? Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to, right? So lean into that zone of genius. And a lot of times it might be something that you think is no big deal, or you don't understand why everyone else thinks it's so great that you do it. And you're like, this little thing, that's the thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I love that you said it doesn't necessarily have to be your professional toolkit, right? Because I had a
Yeah.
friend recently who was like, who'd give away all this, who'd plan itineraries for people when they're traveling. And in her mind, it was just like, well, something, it was fun for her to do,
Mhm.
but people were willing to pay for it. Like it
Yeah.
was, because she was passionate about it. She did research, and you're right. And she never, in her mind, it was like, but this is so silly. No one's ever going to pay me for this. And yet there was so much value that people received from it that, we don't think about those things. So I think that's
Mhm.
great advice.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered?
I would just say, like you were saying, one of your favorite sayings, if you build it, they will not come, you know? I just want the audience to know, like, you can build the funnel, you can build the website, you can build the program or the course or the consulting idea out. No one's going to know about it, right? Like the toughest skill that you will have to master as an entrepreneur is learning how to generate traffic, like regular eyeballs on your stuff, right? That is the number one skill you have to build. And so double down on figuring that out. If nothing else, start there, right? And if you can do it in a way where you're tapping a pre-existing audience source, all the better. That's just fuel on the fire, right? But If you're trying to figure out, do I start with this? Do I start with that? Start with learning how to generate traffic, because everything is easier once you have an audience. And you can't sell to an empty room. So I would just say double down on that one skill set initially. The rest will come.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And it's a great way to get to our rapid fire round. So I'm just going to throw 5 questions at you and tell us what comes to mind. So,
Okay.
what's the most engineering brain thing you do in marketing that most people might think is crazy?
Engineering brain thing in marketing. Oh my, in like marketing specific. I would say my answer to that probably would be the virtual conferences. Lots of people think I'm nuts for doing that. They think it's way too much work for not enough return. Like they just look at me like I'm bonkers. But honestly, the amount of work that you put in behind the scenes, it typically takes 2 to 3 months of planning. But also, if you were to double down on social media, it takes 2 to 3 months of creating 3 pieces of content every single day before
Yes.
you even see an ounce of movement.
Or longer.
I think it's far more crazy to double down on social media than it is to double down on a virtual conference. So that's probably the most like nerdy engineering thing I do on the marketing side. But honestly, it's because it works.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you're living proof that it works. So, corporate Adrienne versus solopreneur Adrienne in an arm wrestling match, who wins and why?
Oh, definitely solopreneur Adrienne. Corporate Adrienne was very put together. I mean, she was great at what she did. Solopreneur, the solopreneur version of me, that's where all the grit and resilience has been built. Because as a solopreneur, you have to get knocked down again and again and again, and you have to get up again and again and again. And so I had a lot of capability. Corporate Adrienne was very capable.
Yeah.
She wasn't necessarily very resilient. And so solopreneur Adrienne definitely she'd knock her out.
And see that.
and get back up again.
And get back up again, dust yourself off and get back up again. Yeah. And she's in the ring, right? She's not the critic
Yeah.
anymore. I think that's
Yeah.
also different. So, if your corporate project management skills were a superhero power, what would your solopreneur villain nemesis be?
Oh, okay. Um, my solopreneur villain nemesis. She'd have to do something like her nemesis powers would be that she could tackle use the 4 hurdles as weapons against people. So I always have a saying that there's 4 hurdles in business that you're going to encounter like thousands of times, but it's always the same 4. They're just dressed up differently. The first is fear, right? So Nemesis Adrienne would like find really interesting ways to like strike fear in the hearts of the entrepreneur, right?
Right.
The second is always a willingness to invest in yourself. Invest time, money, or energy. And so she would be like an investment vampire, like whatever energy someone had, she'd suck it out of them, whatever money they had ready to invest, she would like embezzle it away or something. The third hurdle is always personal leadership. If you can't keep yourself organized and together, you're going to struggle, right? So she would probably like zap people with ADHD or something. Like, I don't know. And then the fourth hurdle is always just grit and resilience, like we just talked about. You have to be willing to get up 1,000 times after getting knocked down. So she would probably have like superpower boxing gloves to knock someone out like TKO. They're not getting up again.
Well, I hope I never meet her. And I got to tell you, Adrienne, for someone who does no social media, you'd be brilliant at it. What's one piece of corporate speak you're happy never to use again?
Oh my gosh, we could go on for 22 hours. Let me circle back. I'll put that in the parking lot. It's all about optics. I don't like the optics of that situation. Blah, blah, bullshit. Like, oh my gosh, we could go on forever.
We used to play bullshit bingo. You reminded me of that just now. On calls. I won't say which clients we did that with, but there were a few very big global clients. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Okay. And I guess the last question, if you had to, what's one productivity hack you refuse to use?
I refuse to use.
Yeah.
Oh, this one is actually pretty easy. I'm not big on ChatGPT and AI.
Okay. Yeah.
It's would I call it refusal? I've just never used it. I used it one time to create a funny image and I was like, oh, that's cute and funny. But I really don't use it. And could I be more efficient? Maybe, probably. But I also feel like when everyone else zigs, I like to zag. And when everyone else is using Chat GPT to create all their marketing and their copy and it all starts to sound the same, I'm going to sound different because I'm generating it from here. And honestly, I feel like the marketers who really excel in the next decade or two are going to be the ones who they use their own mind, their own critical thinking, their own language, and they don't rely on tools to solve all their problems for them. I think they're just going to stand out as better than the rest. Not that you can't succeed if you're using AI, but it all kind of sounds like canned and generic after a while.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is a race to the middle, and it sort of reminds me of this. I don't know who said it, but it's like people remember how you made them feel, but they don't remember how brilliantly optimized your systems were, like your CRM. So I mean, that's kind of where we're at. But thank you. That's a great way to end the show on that note, saying that GPT is not the be all and end all. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for sharing your story and for all the brilliant wisdom and tips you've shared with the audience today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was actually super fun, and I hope your audience enjoys too.
I'm sure they will. Adrienne's story challenges so many myths we tell ourselves about solopreneurship, and her unconventional approach offers a roadmap for those of us who want to build differently. Here are my takeaways. Structure isn't the enemy of freedom, it's the foundation. Adrienne's calendar strategy brilliantly flips the script. Instead of starting with work blocks, she has clients schedule their non-work time first. Vacations, family dinners, workouts. Only then do they build business around that life. Most solopreneurs approach this backwards, cramming life into the leftover spaces. Start with what matters most, then let your business fill the gaps. You're not building a business to become a prisoner. You're building it to design your life. The social media necessity is a myth. While everyone's chasing followers, Adrienne built her entire business without social media by tapping into existing audiences through virtual conferences. Stop believing you need a massive following to succeed. You need the right people, not all the people. Instead of building an audience from scratch, ask yourself whose audience already contains your ideal clients and how can you provide value to them? Your zone of genius feels too easy. Adrienne's biggest breakthrough came when she stopped trying to learn completely new skills and started leveraging what she already knew. If you're constantly telling people, oh, that was nothing, when they compliment you about something you do naturally, pay attention. That dismissive feeling is often your zone of genius talking and might be exactly what others desperately need help with. Narrow your niche, widen your wallet. Adrienne perfectly captures this with her Zanzibar chocolate analogy. I would rather attract the small little group of people who are in love with Zanzibar chocolate than try to compete with the billions of people whose favorite flavor is vanilla. Stop fearing that niching will pigeonhole you forever. Get narrow enough to catch someone's attention, generate revenue, then expand from that foundation of success. Patience and persistence trump perfection. Adrienne's 6-year failure period wasn't wasted time. It was her learning all the things not to do, building the foundation for what would work. If you're in year 2 or 3 and wondering if you'll ever make it, you're not behind. You're right on schedule. The question isn't whether you'll face setbacks, but whether you'll use them as education or let them become your exit strategy. Adrienne's journey proves that sustainable success isn't about hustling harder. It's about building smarter, staying true to your strengths, and creating systems that serve your life, not consume it. Thanks for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If you got value from today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another solopreneur who needs this message. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind. And remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.